The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
Hello, West Michigan. This is Grand Tap Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. The spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, individuals that can help us thrive in our lives and business. And I want to point out that Chris Hontoon is our show engineer today. He is behind the camera. I want to thank him for being here because he is the owner of First Microgreenery, and he wears many hats, and I'm so thankful that he's able to help put on this wonderful show for West Michigan. Well, we have a very special guest for you today. When I reached out to all my friends and asked, who can I have on my show to help me help others that maybe are dealing with mental health or performance issues, or something's happening in their life, especially post-COVID, that they haven't been able to overcome, his name came up. So I want to welcome to the show Dr. Eddie OConnor. He is a speaker. He is a health and mental and sports performance psychologist. And we're going to share what that is. He helps many national athletes, local athletes. He's been on many podcasts, TV shows. He's had articles in ESPN, I'm going to think, and on Fox and other magazines. So I want to welcome Dr. Eddie OConnor, and he's going to share with us how we can overcome some of the mental health issues that we might be experiencing in 2022 still.
Okay, thank you so much. It's really my pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
I really do want to thank you for being here, but it was when I reached out to some of my close friends, I was looking for somebody to help, like even me, still I'm recovering from COVID. And we don't want to go into all the weeds of what happened in 20 and 21. We can all say we experienced something we have never experienced before. Some of us were essential workers and some were non-essentials. Those were terms that we learned in that one. And then maybe we lost a lot and we need to recover, and we're still experiencing kind of anxiety and fear of the unknown. But I wanted you to share in that camera right there who you are and why did everybody say you need to have Dr. Eddie OConnor on your show.
Thank you to all those that did. I've been in Grand Rapids for about 22 years now practicing. So I'm a clinical sport and performance psychologist. And I think where I really differ from what you typically think of as sports psychology, where you have to have positive thinking and confidence so that you can play better, I really help high performers overcome the obstacles to excellence. I believe that we have to actually lean into the difficulties of life and sport. And excellence is on the other side of that. If I was going to tell an Olympic athlete, for example, don't be nervous, like that'd be pretty ridiculous.
Right.
Oh, you got to just calm down, think positively, you're going to win. Like, that's dumb. We know that that's not going to happen. And many of your lives are much the same way. So I've been blessed, again, to be here over 20 years with a telehealth practice. I've got an online membership called Success Stories, and it's all about helping people overcome those challenges so they can be their best consistently. And not just athletes, but performers in music and other things too.
Well, the reason I wanted to talk about mental health, and we spoke on the phone a little bit, I do realize that people are still kind of in a deer in the headlights, kind of figuring out how to maneuver, pivot. Maybe they've lost a lot and they don't want to share with friends and family. And I think I wanted you to kind of validate it's okay that things didn't work out, not even work out, but maybe you were a little held back on trying something new, or maybe your business didn't go as well, or you didn't pivot, as the word is, right? That word I can't stand anymore, but that's what people have used. And maybe you feel like you just are reactionary because of social media. We never went through a crisis like that with social media and everything that brought to that fear factor. And it's still paralyzing a lot of people. Can you share, maybe you can let us know, because we want to have a conversation here, but are you experiencing people saying the same thing?
Sure.
I just feel like I'm not sleeping well, I'm not performing well, the uncertainty of the future has really kind of paralyzed me in somewhat of what to do. And maybe they're just rethinking things, and maybe they want to throw away their career and jump to entrepreneur, which is a big there's a lot there that they need to know about, right?
Yeah, I had to do the same. So I'm with those people in the sense that when all of this happened, lives changed. And what I like to remember, however, is that 2019 wasn't perfect.
Right. Why do we glamorize too? Why do we glamorize and we fear the future?
We keep talking about going back to normal and going back to the old days, but I had a full practice, people struggling well before the pandemic. And it's helpful to remember that, because not to minimize anything that anybody has gone through. And some people have gone through much more than others. And we're not all in the same boat as people would talk about. There's a lot of differences there, and I want to respect that. But if I could take everything that people are going through and remind that we are resilient, and you are resilient because you have gone through things in your life before. And so what skills and situations can you apply now moving forward? Is the more we stay stuck in the past about what happened and the way it used to be, it's over and it's gone. And I understand that and I feel for that. But success comes from then moving forward in the idea of saying, well, what can I do with now? What is the reality of that I have now? And there are opportunities. The future is what we make of it. And that's really where we want to spend most of our time.
How many people look at you and like, oh, that's easy to say? You know what I'm saying?
It is easy
it's easy to say, and you're looking at amount of bills, the anxiety of that, anxiety of what, the uncertainty of. I know that COVID is somewhat behind us, right? It still comes out, but we've all kind of tried to persevere. But don't we have to go? I'm just going to ask you this: don't we have to be a strong mental person, as you describe, as you give people? Do we not have to go through difficulties mentally?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you want to have muscle, but yet you don't want to lift up heavy weights.
That's it perfectly.
How do you tell people something that you've gone through in the last 2 years? That's building something mentally in you strong enough for you to endure something else in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let me paraphrase it for you. Let me do my job.
Thank you.
You actually bring up something that's very, very important. Way too often, we will want to jump to the solution. And you also, as you're speaking about it, there's a bit of intolerance of this distress that we feel. So we absolutely have to start off and say, all your feelings are valid. If you're anxious, you should be anxious. If you're sad, you should be sad. I'm sure there are things that you really do have to feel. And the more comfortable we can become in our discomfort, and not have to say, I got to get out of this and I got to get better and I got to fix it, because we really do want to validate your experiences. So when I suggest that we want to move forward, it's not at the expense of saying you're being ridiculous, you're over-exaggerating, just let it go.
Just get over it.
About it. Right? None of that. That view of mental toughness is old and it doesn't work. It's really much more about the bravery it takes to lean into the feelings that you have.
How long do you do that before it becomes do you know what I mean? To me, life is a fine line. And it's like, okay, you have to lean into it, but how far do you okay, now you have to take an action. You can't let this fear paralyze you. I mean, is that what you're kind of saying? You could lean into it.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, well, it depends. Like if you have an argument with a loved one, you might want to lean into it and acknowledge yourself for 60 seconds before you go ahead and do the right thing. But if you've lost a loved one, it might take months where you actually say you have to respect that feeling, and you're not going to be as productive. You're not going to be the wonderful worker and parent, and you have to honor that grief. So it really depends. It's like the big answer in psychology. There isn't a prescription where I can say it's this amount of time, but you have to look at it. If you're stuck in your distress and the rest of your life is falling apart, well, then out of necessity, you have to find a way to balance it. And it's not just one step after the other, but it's the two components. And you'll find that if you actually lean into your distress and you validate it, then you tend to not be as stuck, because that's the true processing. If you're ruminating, if you're 2 years later and still thinking about, gosh, the way it used to be or what those people did to me and that wasn't fair, that's a bunch of staying up here.
Right.
And that's ruminating, and that's not helpful. But if you feel it down here and you cry about it and you grieve it and you accept what has happened, then it clears up a space where you can say, so what do I do now? How do I bring that along with me as I go ahead and create a new life, get back into shape, pursue a new goal? And it's a little bit of back and forth, but you have to respect that what you're feeling is real and bring it along with you, not get rid of it and fix it so that you can move forward.
Right. And so you are a sports psychologist, correct? What is that even, to me, life is a sport. kind of like you play a game. You're actually the main player in this sport in your life, and we all know that. And then you have all the other people that assist you in your goals. So it's kind of like being on a sports team somewhat. But what do you tell people that are, what is a sport? What exactly is that? Let's get to the question here.
Well, so a sports psychologist is somebody who will work to help somebody enjoy their performance or the enjoyment of the sport itself. So we have clinical sports psychologists, which I'm trained in, means I have a license in clinical psychology, so I can really handle the distress that people go through. So if there's severe performance anxiety, perfectionism, injury and rehabilitation, I will do a lot of that as a clinical psychologist licensed. And then they have certified mental performance consultants, and I'm that as well. And that's where we take people who are average and doing fine, but they want to excel. Because if you want to be in the top 5%, you have to be able to do what 95% of the other people either can't or won't. That's not normal. And so a certified mental performance consultant through the Association for Applied Sports Psychology is a credential that allows us to work with that higher end population. So now when you start talking about sport, I certainly started with that, but then I've moved more towards performance psychology, realizing that sport's a nice context, but my athletes, sometimes they're getting better grades, and we didn't even talk about school. Their relationships are improving when we're working on a particular sport example. Or again, as I said, I'll have musicians come in and they're nervous before auditions. Or I'll have an artist who's getting stuck with creativity because they're worried about how much people are going to evaluate their work. I mean, really, if you want to perform at a high level under pressure, the sports psychology literature can work.
Okay, so, all right, so that is, performance is everything, even being a host of this show.
Absolutely.
Performance. When people come to you, is it really the basic is that they believe they have talent, but they are comparing themselves to others, or they feel like the nervousness of getting to those levels, because as you get up, it's harder to compete with that. Am I going in the right direction here?
I'm smiling because I'm like, I want you guys to pay attention to this. I'm about to drop something
and it
really
becomes
important.
mental. And a lot of people will say that. I told you before the show, I'm a big fan of the PGA golf, and that's, there's a lot of good golfers, and I know a lot of them. But the PGA level, that's mental. You're performing in front of people. Nobody's helping you except maybe your caddy. You're all alone with your thoughts all the time. Yep. And so where am I going with this? You think
I'll tell you where
true?
you're going.
Thank you.
And I really do want people to hear this, because I think this has the potential to change people's lives. The more you care, the more you're going to worry. Skunks have sprays, turtles have shells. They've got this survival instinct that when they're threatened, they've got a thing to do. And what we have is a mind that's able to jump out into the future and look and see what could go wrong and tell us about it. Mm-hmm. You can't stop that. Dramatic pause. You can't stop that worrying. But what you can do is choose how to react to it. I want everybody out there to understand that if you're worried about something, it's a lot. It's probably because you really care about it. Your mind doesn't tell you what is going to go wrong. It just tells you what could go wrong. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that if I'm an athlete and I'm worried about losing, and my friends are telling me, "Oh, don't worry about it, you're great," that makes me more scared, because now you're telling me to not pay attention to something that's actually very real. I could lose, because athletes lose all the time.
Right.
If I'm really nervous about a test, and I'm afraid that I might fail, failure is real. But what do we try to do? We say, "Oh, don't worry about it, you're good, you're great, you're pretty, you're strong, you're this, you're that," and don't worry about it.
Or you'll get over it. You just have to come back
and that
stronger.
Undermines the reality that there is a threat. But your anxiety is much more correlated to how much you actually care about something. If I asked you what are the 3 things you're most concerned about and worried about, you would tell me the 3 things that are also most important to you. Mm-hmm. And that's important to remember, because it's not a sign that something is definitely going to go wrong. And so the more you care, the more you should worry about it. Now here's the difference. If you can start to realize that your anxiety and nervousness is much more about how much you care, and that your brain is really just kind of doing this mechanism, kind of like a fire alarm, right? If ever a fire alarm went off, you and I would bolt out of here, right? But would it always mean that there is a fire? Well, no. I've been in hundreds of fires, or fire alarms rather, and it's never been a fire.
Never been a fire. I know.
Right?
We went to school, we had fire alarms.
But if you told me to just ignore it, if one went off and you're like, "Oh, just ignore it, let's keep going," we would both be nervous.
Yes.
Right? But if we did jump out every time, like let's say, for example, you knew it was a drill and you're like, oh, it's in the back, we'll edit it out, don't worry about it. You know, it would interfere with the performance if we jump up and left every time. So what's the deal with the fire alarm? We always have to lean into it, respect that the alarm is going off, and check out, is it safe? If it's safe, I can ignore it, I can walk out and do the drill slowly, I have a certain response. And if I see smoke and there's a fire alarm, well then I need to really do something about it. We would never say we got to shut off all the fire alarms. So our worry is the same way. Lean into your worry. When you're worried about something, take it seriously. Okay, mind, you know, thanks for warning me about this. I'm afraid that this interview is not going to go well. I'm really nervous. Okay. Well, is there something to be nervous about? Well, I've prepared. I know my stuff. You know, that's just my mind telling me that I care about this interview. So I can let that thought be there, just let it go, and then refocus on what is important, your question, what I want to tell the audience. Now, if I wasn't prepared, if I didn't know my stuff, well, then the anxiety would work. Oh gosh, it's the night before, I don't know about this interview. Well, did I prepare? No. Oh, well, I better prepare. And I can sit down and I can review notes or I can do something else. So our anxiety is not a problem, people. And you can't get rid of it. And if you did get rid of it, you'd be in a lot of trouble because you wouldn't worry about the things that you should worry about. And of course, there's an extreme to it. But if you start to understand that if you're worried about your future, you're worried about your performance, I tell my athletes and my performers, good, it means you care. Now, how do we want to respond to it? Your problem's not the problem, it's how you interact with your problem. That's the problem.
Well, what about the, and I agree, and I can say this, but I still have a hard time implementing it in practice when you look in the mirror, you know, because I do things to get ready for the interview. You know, I pump myself up. I have music I listen to. I have a litany of stuff that I do throughout the morning to get ready for my interview. So I'm perky and you know what I'm saying? That I am engaging. I did some research. I listened to some of the interviews that you've been on how they engaged with you and your questions. But how do you look in the mirror sometimes? And I would say this imposter syndrome that people suffer from. You understand. You deal with that with people. Yeah. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. And with social media, I think and critics and people having all these opinions of what you can do better and what you could have done. And I almost want to say you weren't there. You don't understand but some of us are never going to be the Super Bowl level. We watched Super Bowl recently, you know, and those guys were the best of the best. But somebody did lose. And they were crying on the sidelines. You wept for them, right? Yeah. But that's kind of like in life too. You can have a great life. You may not be the Oscar winner, if that makes sense. People, do they understand that might be, this is good? Can you talk about that?
I can. Again, you hit a number of points. I'm going to see if I can pull some.
Right.
Let's go in reverse order. When you say good, bad, I like to help people kind of say we need to stop evaluating that because a lot of things just are. You know, is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? What should I do? What shouldn't I do? I don't know. There aren't answers to that.
Right.
And getting rid of all of that evaluation as much as we can, because evaluation is different than descriptive. So I'll work with my clients a lot on this. When we can use more descriptive language, you know, this is green, right? If I had 100 people would agree in different languages maybe that's green. But if we said it's a beautiful plant or a big plant or a small plant, we could argue with that based on how we interact with it.
Correct.
It's not that's in it. So the more we can stay with descriptive language and kind of talk about things as they are, it takes a lot of our emotions out of it and it's more helpful. Particularly when we want to play sport or do well. Basketball doesn't care what you think and feel. Whoever scores the most points wins. So all this extra stuff about comparisons and rankings and, you know, I mean, do the top 4 ranked teams make the Final Four in the NCAA tournament every year? No. So what happens to all those rankings? They don't mean anything. The football college rankings, they change every week. They don't mean anything. They're a bunch of opinions.
Correct.
They shouldn't mean anything to the players because how to throw the ball, catch the ball, etc., is based on a behavior science. So the more we can get out of this mental stuff, I'm a psychologist trying to get you out of psychology, the more you can let go of a lot of that evaluative thinking, good, bad, the better off that you're going to be. And that then leads to the imposter syndrome, which is a big thing.
It is, and I hear it everywhere, and I know that now it's become the buzzword that people, I guess, self-sabotage themselves And maybe you can share where you probably recognize that in people. Why are you doing this? Do people really know? I don't know why I think what I think, and I don't know why I'm thinking those thoughts at that time. Do we ever have a clue where my mind thoughts come from?
Rewind this interview from 5 minutes ago, because you care. Like, the people who care the most about doing well are the ones who are going to have the biggest imposter syndrome, because I really, really want to be the best. And now I've got these things that I'm achieving, and I'm getting a promotion, or I'm making the starting team. And now people are depending on me, and gosh, I don't know if I can do well. I don't know, I don't want to disappoint people.
Correct.
Of course you don't. I'm not going to fix that.
Right.
I'm not going to take that away, but it's not a problem. We understand and say, the only reason I'm thinking these terrible thoughts about I suck, I'm terrible, I'm bad, I don't want to make a mistake, is because I care so much about what I'm doing. I'm actually in the right place. Now, if I feel like an imposter, I shouldn't be here, well, again, I don't like that word should or shouldn't. That's not true. You are there. So the evidence of the world says you should be there because you are there.
Correct.
Now, what are you going to do with it? That's the pivot. And that's the hard part that you're saying. It's like, oh, but that's hard to do. Yes. It is hard.
It's hard to lose 20 pounds, and you got to look at people. I'm like, yes.
It is. Let's respect the difficulty of performance in life, and especially respect the difficulty of excellence. We're going to get into trouble if we keep thinking it needs to be easy, or I need to stop the negative thoughts, I need to get rid of my anxiety, I can't be sad about this. We don't have any control over our emotions.
Right.
They show up. They're valid. We can only control our response to them. And that's hard.
I will tell you, and I've been more and more observant on what we say, words-wise, and even though I have those thoughts. And I shared this with my husband. And I said, I noticed that people that good things happen, not always, but a lot, is how they say things out loud. I noticed that people will say things like, you know what, they're positive about it. And not always, but mostly. And I go, did you hear? He goes, like, somebody needed to make money. And they go, like, I had to figure out how to make more money. I needed money. I had to figure it out. And so he went out and he started to figure it out. And he did really well in the stock market. He goes, I need to find stocks that can make me dividends. Just these kind of things. To me, it's like I might have said, I don't want to lose money. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know why I'm picking up on that. Now, do you notice that when you are, what words were, the power of words, and when they repeat them over and over, like, I need to lose weight, and then lose weight, instead of saying, is that making sense?
Yeah, again, I have at least 3 suggestions there. So the one you're talking about, the description again. So I need to make more money. When he was talking about I need to make more profitable stocks, very descriptive.
Right.
There was no emotion, I'm poor, I'm terrible, none of that. It was like, this is what I need to do, future-oriented, descriptive. The second thing that you challenged was, you were like, oh gosh, I don't want to lose money.
Right.
So there's a big difference between positive language in the sense of saying things that we do want to happen versus negative language, not as evaluation, but negative in the sense of what I don't want. So, for example, 5-second test. Whatever you do, don't think about chocolate. Go.
I'm thinking it right now.
Right.
Candy bars, kisses,
Right. Now, do you see? Because our
Chocolate
brain
milk?
doesn't process the not, the don't, the avoid, the shouldn't. When we say what we don't want something, we get an image of what it is that we don't want to do. So this is really big with my coaches when they're saying, okay, whatever you do, just don't fumble. Oh my gosh. Like you just
don't go in that Sam trap,
Right, yeah, exactly. You've just cursed that athlete, But because that's where you say, well, how do I not do that? It doesn't tell you what to do. So the idea of I don't want to lose money, you care about that, right? You have to acknowledge, lean in. Of course you don't want to, of course I don't want to lose money. That makes sense. Have compassion for yourself. And then switch it around. So if I don't want to lose money, then what do I do to keep it or to make it? And be sure that that language, as you're talking about,
correct,
tells you what to do.
Yeah, is when you start picking up on what people are saying to themselves, I find that interesting, and I'm more in check to watch what I'm saying to myself. And that's probably, like you said, that's the biggest thing of what people really, because those are a thought behind a thought behind a thought, and coming out. I'm afraid. And well, okay, so let's talk about, I want to share with, when people call you, what what is it basically they're looking for? I can't get over this barrier. I want to be at this level, which I'm probably sure that's it. But what is some of the things that they are calling you about? Because I could call you about a lot of things that, you know, I'm stuck at this. I don't know why I'm holding myself back, or what?
Yeah, I'll give you, I mean, they call me for a lot of reasons. And
is there a repeating thing, though?
Well, I'll say sort of, yeah, the two or three biggest ones would be the anxious athlete or high performer, where they're okay in practice, but then they get into games, competition, races, and they can't perform the way that they've trained their body. And it's very, very frustrating because they know that they could do more, but either their fear, their doubt, their worry, their inability to focus gets in the way, and then they're underperforming. So that would probably be number one, and that has a lot to do sometimes with a lot of the techniques that we just talked about here and the words that they're using. Very often it comes from an idea of feeling the pressure and not wanting to disappoint others. And a short story of how I help with that is realizing that, hey, your parents are going to be okay if you don't win that race, or people can handle it. Or for sometimes it's a matter of really just explaining, of course you're nervous. Again, there's nothing more powerful than the lecture I gave here earlier, talking about your anxiety means that you care. And so for a lot of my performers, most of them are coming in with some level of performance anxiety. It's a matter of telling them, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You should feel this way. You're at the high end of performance. You have stuff to be scared about. Correct. Now, how do we do it? What do we do with that? So a lot of perfectionists come in for that too, the inability to tolerate the mistakes. And so I teach them to be the perfect perfectionist.
Okay, so as you're looking in the camera, West Michigan, and maybe people, I will highly recommend to get you going and get you on a process so you can succeed in where you want to change your life, the outcome. You know, share with them how they can reach you and what you can do for them, because a lot of people might really need to really reframe what they're doing in 2022 to have a different outcome.
Well, everything is located on my website at dreddieoconnor.com. What you can find on there is a free mental toughness in 60-second video series. I've got like 150 things on YouTube that are free. I've got a course, The Psychology of Performance, How to Be Your Best in Life. I'd like to highlight a workshop on sleep, as well as my Success Stories membership. Again, monthly membership where people who want to overcome obstacles to excellence and be their best more consistently have a community where we work together with online modules to go at your own pace. And if you do want individual sessions, I'm a licensed psychologist in Michigan, and I do telehealth. And so if you want that individual work, I can work one-on-one with you as well.
Well, you must have a great reputation, because when I asked, like I mentioned in the beginning, my friends, who should I get? And your name came up so many times, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to you, and I really appreciate you being here. So we want to thank Dr. Eddie OConnor for being here, and check him out if you want to change your future. I would highly recommend that. So this is Pamela Keim. Well, let me shake your hand here. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks so much.
All right, this is Pamela Keim from GRTV Media. We will catch you next time on GRTV Media Business TV. Take care, everyone.
The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.